Hello and welcome to South Africa on 99.94 Cricket Every Day. I'm Neil Manthorpe. My co-host is Lungani Zama. And South Africa on 99.94 is your new home for South African content. We'll be dropping into your podcast feed on YouTube or on the 99.94 app several times every week. So please rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks for joining Cricket's conversation. Zams and I are going to talk about the series, which is just the ODI series, which is just coming to a finish in India, a crucial one for South Africa, potentially. They are hanging on by their fingernails, Zams, in order to try and automatically qualify for the 50-over World Cup. In a game which is setting fixture precedents by the week, internationally anyway. This is the bar has been raised to a new high, or maybe that should be a new low, with the fact that South Africa are staying on to play an ODI series, and a really important one for them. While India's T20 team they left for Australia before the first ODI to prepare, and yet the South African boys have stayed behind. I'm not going to even go anywhere near describing the Indian team as a B team, but obviously they're missing some massive players. I mean, it's still a very, very strong team, but it's a bizarre state of affairs, isn't it?
Bizarre. It is a B team, if we're being honest, Benders. And the fact that South Africa are trudging through fudge to somehow get the job done is a bit scary. But they have to play the series because obviously we've negated the ODI series against Australia to start the SA20. So, every decision has its consequence. And like you say, it's crazy that the rest of the world is pretty much in Australia preparing for the World Cup, which is on our doorstep. But we've got to honor this commitment because we're trying to make sure we come back to India in a year for the World Cup. And it's looking increasingly likely that South Africa probably going to have to go the qualification route, which is unheard of.
Well, unheard of, but I mean, the West Indies had to do it, didn't they? And again, for the second World Cup in a row, the tournament will be held in Harare, which has become very spin friendly, by the way. And there's a distinct possibility that if South Africa do have to go there, they may meet the West Indies there again, and there's either the West Indies or Sri Lanka, and that's going to be really, really interesting if South Africa do have to pre-qualify. But before we get onto that, let's just go back and look at some of the decisions that have been made that have left South Africa in this position. I was just going back. Just let's remind everybody, just very briefly, that the World Cup Super League was, I thought, an excellent concept. Really good. The hosts qualify automatically, India, and then the top 7 out of 13 teams. Each country was assigned 4 home series and 4 away series. South Africa had England, Pakistan, Netherlands, and Bangladesh at home, and Sri Lanka, Ireland, India, and Australia away, which I thought was a fair mix, really, because there was no science in the way these fixtures were divided up. It was just a question of who was available and how could they fit them in. But when we looked at that, we thought, well, that really shouldn't be a problem. But let's just so the Pakistan home series, South Africa lost 2-1 here in South Africa. Before the critical third game, they lost Rabada, Miller, Van der Dussen, De Kock, and Ngidi and Nokia. 6 top players left to go to the IPL just before the decider. And, we know where we stand on the IPL, and we know that the players are not to blame. I'm just saying that that's what happened. In Sri Lanka, they rested Quinton de Kock. They were back-to-back. Do you remember there were 6 white ball games, 3 ODIs and 3 T20s. They rested Quinton de Kock for the ODIs, not the T20s. He played the T20s, so he flew all the way to Colombo. In Ireland, they lost a game. They bowled poorly to concede 290. in the second game, lost it, bowled out for 247, chasing those runs. And when Bangladesh came to South Africa in March, I think that was the worst collective ODI performance from a South African team in the last 15 years. I think they were complacent. They'd just beaten India on home soil, 3-0. And that series, of course, fell outside of the Super League. And I just think they were really complacent. And they leaked 310 in the first game, lost it comfortably, and were then bowled out for 154 in the third game, having won the second. And then, as you said, they cancelled the ODI. Well, they declined to play in the ODI series in Australia after the Test series, which cost them. Well, I'm not saying it cost them 30 points, but they've really have themselves to blame. Do you agree?
The common word there is complacency throughout. All these series that you've so thoroughly prepared for and gone back to, because it's easy to forget when you just look at the current series and go, oh, it's a must win. There have been opportunities to win and be comfortable going to the World Cup for quite a while for South Africa. And there's just been, like you say, you let 6 players go to the IPL and that's that. And I remember Temba at the time saying that these are players' decisions. And it's you could tell that he was irritated at the fact that he could do nothing about it. Half his best players were going to the IPL, and that was that. He was concerned, and he was right to be concerned because Pakistan is a good team. And if you're looking at the World Cup, because it's something that you've got to qualify for. Now, if you lose a home series, you put more and more pressure to have to win away. And Ireland, is tricky. So it's been very, very complacent. And now that it's come to a head, you kind of look back and you look around. I mean, why would you rest? Goodness, Quinton de Kock doesn't need rest at the moment. He's very clearly marked out his cricket calendar. He doesn't need rest. Whenever he's available for South Africa, he should play every single game because he's not putting on white kit anymore. So it's astounding that the planning around this has been so laissez-faire. And now, like you say, you're suddenly going to a tournament in Zimbabwe with Sri Lanka and West Indies, who will absolutely fancy their chances of loading their attacks with spin and putting on a competitive total and saying, let's see where the cards fall. It's an unnecessary layer of pressure just before a World Cup. And I mean, you don't even want to consider the embarrassment of not qualifying for a World Cup simply because you rested players for a majority of the series on the way to qualifying, declined an invitation to go to Australia. It looks terrible. So there's already a lot of pressure. And it shouldn't be, but it is. And yeah, I'm sure they're starting to look at hotels in Harare to say, where are we going to stay and where are we going to have our team camp? Because that becomes a must-win tournament. And the reality is you put so much emphasis on that qualifying tournament suddenly that by the time you get to the World Cup, you've actually probably played some of your best cricket before you've actually got to the proper tournament, which is crazy. But, this is where they are. And this is what they've got to do now.
Well, you said that we don't want to consider the ramifications of not qualifying for the World Cup, but that is exactly what I want to do after this short break. We'll talk about where it might leave South African cricket in just a moment.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
Okay, we're back. So I can't help but to consider what might happen if South Africa don't qualify for the 50-over World Cup. Not that I find it enjoyable, but I find it unavoidable. I mean, the potential ramifications of South Africa not being at that World Cup. And I'm not talking about money in players' pockets. I'm talking about much, much more than that.
Yeah, it's oh, it's a proper national embarrassment. And then it just sits. I mean, I don't know. It's like Christmas without turkey. Like it's unthinkable since coming back from readmission that you you're not going to have South Africa at the World Cup with everything that they bring to the World Cup with all the pressure and all the expectation and all the doom dreams. It's they're one of the biggest teams in the world, and now you're starting to look at it and going, oh, there's a serious banana slip coming here where then you seriously run the risk of losing even more players to national contracts who just go, actually, if we can't even qualify for World Cups anymore, do I really need a national contract that ties me and doesn't allow me to go and play the 100 or the CPL in between because I don't have a World Cup to look forward to? Or actually, this was my swan song, because a lot of these guys are sort of 30 plus looking at India as probably the last realistic chance of going to a World Cup. If you don't qualify for it, it's just the most hollow. I mean, 2019 was bad. 2019 was terrible. They built it up, and the team just did not arrive. Simply did not arrive. It was almost as bad as not qualifying because you expected them to get through the group stages and they just never arrived. And you could tell the pressure heaping on. And we know South Africans in pressure, especially at the World Cup. So you can imagine what's going to be going through their minds if they actually have to go to this World Cup qualifier tournament and the added pressure of that. Yeah, it's too grim to consider, but we do, like you say, have to properly consider that, you're going to have to book a ticket to Harare and cover a couple of must-win games. And as your World Cup ticket stops in Harare and you don't even go to Mumbai.
It's a scary prospect. I'm just wondering also about whether expectation fatigue is setting in. I mean, I remember 1992, 1991 World Cup, when that was the only one where there were no expectations, and of course South Africa reached the semi-final and went out in dramatic. It was pre-Duckworth Lewis, wasn't it? So South Africa needed 22 off one ball, having been 22 off 13 balls. But subsequently, the expectation levels have risen, and we build them up, and South Africans build them up, and I just wonder, one of the many consequences, and of course, the levels of disappointment and failure increased every 4 years, and at one point became unmanageable. I didn't know how I was going to recover after the '99 semi-final, but then it went on, and there was the 2015 semi-final, and we used to talk through all those years, decades, about players who were unscarred. So we'd say, well, the great thing this year, this World Cup, is that we've got 7 players who've never experienced this scarring. But I think they have. I mean, they did as kids, watching and experiencing the levels of disappointment. And I just wonder whether one of the consequences of the new world is that young players might say, I just don't need this. I I I can actually live without it. It's a horrible concept. But do you think they're just going, do you know what? I mean, like, I, I'll mention Tristan Stubbs by name. I don't know him well enough to suggest that he might be the kind of person who'd think about it. But, if he's got 25 million in the bank by the time he's 25, and he's seen, albeit secondhand, and experienced the levels of disappointment and opprobrium that come the way of players after they fail at a World Cup. I mean, his generation might just say, hey, I don't need this. I don't deserve this.
Nah, I think given everything that South Africa has accomplished in other fields, and they've seen the level of national euphoria and everything that comes with winning on the ultimate stage and then coming back, any cricketer worth his South African salt would love to be part of the first that finally gets it right. I mean, half those guys sort of played in that under 14, under 19 team in 2014 with Markram and Rabada and Andile, and there's a few of them. They know what it feels like, what it means. Enough of them do. They've all sort of won things that matter. I don't think you put on a national jersey and then shy away from the biggest moments. That's They've watched their rugby counterparts become not just national heroes but international heroes. I mean, Siya Kolisi shot an ad the other day saluting Roger Federer on his retirement. That's what winning on the ultimate stage does. It opens doors that you can't fathom. He can pop up at Anfield at Liverpool and just say, "Hi, I'm Siya," and Jurgen Klopp gives him a hug and gives him, the run of Melwood. These are the things that happen when you win the biggest tournaments. And I don't think any cricketer who has the option of going to a World Cup and potentially winning it will ever say, actually, I'd rather shy away from the pressure and just go and make an easy $250,000 somewhere else. It actually helps your marketability for the next tournament. It does. So I would be staggered if someone was going, actually, I'll sit this one out happily. Let some other kid come in and be able to write a book about how after years and years and years of heartbreak, they somehow snuck over the line and won South Africa's first World Cup. If you got the chance and you got the legs, surely you've got to want to play.
I'm very glad you said that, because that's the way I'm feeling as well. So I was just playing devil's advocate. But what about a guy like Devolt Brevis? So Tristan Stubbs has now, he's played international cricket, and he's got the taste for it, and clearly he's savouring it and loving it. So he was probably a bad example. But there'll be more Devolt Brevises. There'll be more youngsters like him. I mean, we've just seen the South Africa under-19 team win the Division 2 T20 domestic competition, and that is an exciting team, really exciting team. We mentioned in our last podcast that some of them may well be signed up by franchises before they've played for South Africa. So what if their taste experience is very different to Tristan Stubbs? I mean, Brevis hasn't played for South Africa, and he's probably got more money than you and I combined will ever have.
Comfortably more money. But he hasn't traveled the world with his team, and the hero that he's modeled himself on is adored by billions in India and around the world because of what he did in the South African jersey, win or lose. Whether it was the Tears of 2015 or every door opened because of what AB did in South African kit. It was the Pink Day. It was that extraordinary innings against West Indies in Sydney 2015. It was everything that he's done in national colours. So until you've worn them, you can model yourself, but you're not yet a South African champion. You can't call yourself an international cricketer. And I think that still matters. These guys are wearing SA under-19 gear. They want to wear the real thing. They want to say, I've got that. To this day, David Miller wants a test cap. Won't get it, but that's the one thing left on his CV besides winning a major tournament. Always wanted it. So these small things that might seem like, oh, you've made all this money, David Miller, you're fine. There are things that as a cricketer you grow up saying, I want to do that. And a lot of them want to say, I won a World Cup for South Africa, or at least I went and played at a World Cup and lost the thriller. But jeepers, what an awesome responsibility to know that everyone is glued in back home, hoping that I get this right because it means so much. Surely.
Well, I know that I'm being a particularly persistent devil's advocate at the moment.
Very persistent, yeah.
I actually do wonder whether there might be kids signed at 18, 19 years old who don't experience that level, and so I mean, you don't miss what you don't know, and I think that I'm only a little bit older than you, but our generations just make this assumption that of course you want to play for South Africa, but there is a possibility. You must be able to see the possibility that playing franchise cricket around the world might just become so prevalent that they have no concept of what that experience might be, particularly if South Africa don't qualify for the World Cup next year.
Yeah, look, I hear you, and I'm going to keep betting stoutly for patriotism here because I think, yeah, it's just there's enough problems in South African cricket for players to now not want at all to play for South Africa. I think, even a Quinton de Kock had the option of just walking away and just becoming a cricket wanderer, and do the kind of thing that AB did at the very tail end of his career and just pick the best leagues and almost go on a swan song and just collect checks. The reason he stayed is because he wants to win in national colours. He's had a taste of it, and as much as the money is fantastic, ludicrous sometimes, you don't grow up saying, I want to become a cricketing billionaire. You grow up to say, I want to win something for my country. It's the same for the Springboks. It's the same. I don't know if Bafana players still get up hoping to win things because they don't win anymore. But you grow up wanting to win something because you watched and you saw what it meant for you as a school kid, and getting up the next day and talking about, I can't believe Alan Donald didn't run, or I can't believe he dropped his bat. That's the thing. No one gives two stuffs about an IPL final as soon as it's done. The money's great, but it's forgotten. You can't tell me who won the 2017 IPL without going onto your phone and thinking about it. You can't tell me what was the defining moment. But if you go back to 91, you know exactly what happened. You know where you were. You go back to 99. You go back to the rain in Durban in 2003. You know exactly where you were as South Africa failed. 2011 was the stuff up with New Zealand. You know where you were. I know exactly where I was in 2019 because those are the biggest moments for the country. That's the stuff that people watch. Everybody watches. Your friends, your family, anyone you played against. That's the stage they aspire for. And if it gets to the point where people are saying, no thanks, no way, no, even the SA20 loses value at that point because your marquee players are no longer marquee. It's just random. Then you might as well just open gates and say, just get whoever you want. It doesn't matter. Your national players have a window that says you bring them in here because they matter. Why? Because they play for your country. Because that's the ultimate. That's the marketability. So I say absolutely no way. And the day that happens, then we really, really don't have a job.
Well, we need to have a break because you've just traumatized me mentioning all of those World Cup moments because I was at all of them. So I need to take a deep breath. And we'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the final series that South Africa have to play in order to try and qualify for the World Cup.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
All right, I've taken a deep breath and I've managed to recover from all of those memories. Still the most traumatic was 99, by the way. But Zams, by the time England arrive, there is, for the one-day series at the end of January and the beginning of February, which is going to be played during the SA20, as you know. And that is a ticking time bomb. And it's ticking very loudly. And I can see all sorts of dramatic and probably traumatic things happening around that series. But I'll come to that. That'll be our second question in this final section. So they will have to win that 3-0. And then they have scheduled the last two Netherlands games against the Netherlands, because remember they came over and They played the first game, or they played half of the first game. Then it rained, and then they went home because of Omicron, I think it was. So there was the second wave or third wave, can't remember now, of the pandemic. So they're playing those games in April. They will be on the Highfield, so hopefully it won't rain. But they will have to win 5 out of 5, and beginning with those 3 against England. That's going to be a really tough ask. Okay, so I'm going to come straight to the point. Actually, I'm not going to save it. If Cricket South Africa thought it merited declining to play those 3 one-dayers in the middle of January in Australia in order to have their best players available for the SA20, what chance they will pick the strongest team during the SA20 as the competition moves towards its playoff stages?
Absolutely no chance. Absolutely no chance, because the owners that have bought these franchises have surely got guarantees and contracts with these best players, that most of them were actually signed even before the tournament, the auction happened. You devalue, like, it's an incredible conundrum to be in, because you would devalue the one thing that you're selling and banking your future on, but at the same time, if you don't pick your best team, you are literally saying that you are willing to gamble with qualification the hard way. But there's absolutely no way. I'm sure these owners are not stupid. They would have seen the logjam and gone, just by the way, every single one of those players that we've signed are fully available. Otherwise, we're not signing them. It would have had to be. It would have had to be. I mean, there's international players that were left unsigned because they were only available for a couple of weeks before they went to another gig. Okay, no thanks. We don't want to build a team around you and then you disappear halfway before we win the thing. We want you here for the whole tournament. So you're not signing Quinton de Kock to then say, as Lance Klusener, okay, cheers, we'll figure out. Because actually, if Quinny goes, Heinrich Klaassen probably goes as well. There go your 2 keeper batsmen. It's not going to happen. Just not going to happen.
Yeah, see, I was in the SACA, South African Cricketers Association offices the other day, and I just happened to see a year planner chart on the wall, and it had June, July, like not in it was there in black marker, permanent marker, the qualifying tournament. So I think largely, I mean, that, you know, the players know that they have to beat England 3-0, and then I hope it doesn't rain and there's no problem against the Netherlands. But I think they've inked it in. I think they have made peace with the fact that they're going to have to go to Harare and play against Scotland, Ireland, the UAE, Papua New Guinea, Sri Lanka, or the West Indies. And you said it was a must-win tournament, but actually, I think you can the 2 finalists,
Top 2, yeah.
That could just be, of all the World Cups that I've been to and Champions Trophies and T20 World Cups, that could just be the most buttock clenching tournament I will ever have gone to.
I think they call it squeaky bum time.
Yeah.
And it will be. It will be, because, you know, we know these teams and how they react to pressure, and there's enough South Africans spread across these associate nations to gently remind them of the burden and responsibility of being this first South African team to never qualify for a World Cup. It's unthinkable. But, you know, once it's been penned into SACA diaries, you know, as sure as Christmas is coming.
And a final word on England's conundrum, because Joss Butler's being paid. Well, we don't know because he was pre-signed, wasn't it? But the word is that he's being paid $500,000 by the Pearl Royals. He's England captain. Now, the other thing to mention is that England series is being played in Bloemfontein and Kimberley, because they're the only 2 venues which are available, and they're not the most accessible. And Joss Butler's going to be playing his cricket in Paarl. So he's going to have to get from Paarl to Cape Town, and then, you know, there aren't many flights and the planes aren't very big, and take a week out of the series. So definitely missing 1 game, probably two, for his franchise, who are paying him $500,000 to play in a series which is utterly irrelevant to England.
I think there's a conversation to be had there where the captain will suddenly make an awkward release saying that he's being rested and Bairstow or someone else is going to pick up the gloves for that series as England look to build depth. I don't think at that amount of money, Josh Butler will be turning out in Bloemfontein. I can't see it.
No, neither can I. Right, you're listening to South Africa on 99.94, where we speak cricket, as you can hear, and all of the issues around it. So please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcasts. You can download the 99.94 app and follow us on Twitter at Neil Manthorpe, and at Whamzam17. So never miss out. Join our conversation 24/7. So never miss out. Join 24/7 our conversation on social media and follow us at 99.4 DM. Cricket every day, your way.